And our very special guest this morning, Mr. Michael McAnuff-Jones. Are you there?
Brother, Vernon.
Yes. Great to have you,
Okay.
Michael McAnuff-Jones. And sir, you have been around. You were at Scotia at one time, Vice President there for HR
I was head of HR for Scotiabank at one time, yes.
at one time. You're also Vice
Yes.
Chair there at UTEC, at the council there.
I was there at one time, yes.
And you're involved, I think it's Hermage, and I must tell you, that's the Association for Human Resource is it personnel. They have been very supportive of this program over the years. So now that I am aware that you're part of them, you have more work cut out for you. So sorry for you. Great to have you. First time on this program. Why take you so long to come on this program, sir?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I didn't believe the invitation was persuasive enough, but here I am now.
You see, you say, come straight back at me. No, you've been invited here because we're trying to get the views of a number of persons across the island, and especially persons who are concerned about our country. They're not necessarily concerned strong on politics, but they're just concerned about the country, the corruption, the crime, and I think it would be a good idea to have somebody like you as an HR practitioner who has had many years' experience in that field. And sometimes we have to look at things from different perspective. So we're happy to hear you, Mr. McAnuff-Jones.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
So you go right into it and tell us what you think. And I will ask you a few questions, but it's your time to tell us and to speak to the nation as to where we are at this time. I am feeling very uncomfortable with the country. Economically, we seem to be moving here to some extent, but there are other things, the crime, the indiscipline, it's a real problem. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vernon. Well, I do believe that we, as a nation, are challenged with some things that have been kind of legacy matters for us. Many countries have core values which are clearly enunciated and which everybody can recite. It is difficult for us to understand or to find what these core values are for Jamaica, and they are all embedded in the national anthem and the pledge, but somebody needs to distill them and help us to understand what they are. And for us to have a consensus around what these things ought to be.
But don't forget, we don't sing it again, the national anthem. We don't sing it. Somebody perform it for us. So.
Well, which is unfortunate. Well, I think we still, we ought to be singing it.
And by the way, it's a prayer, right?
It's a prayer. It's a prayer.
I see.
But I think, my brother Vernon, that I think we need a moral revolution in Jamaica, and I'm not talking about moral reform. And I am, I'm going to say unapologetically that when I say moral revolution, that I am referring to that in relationship to the Judeo-Christian ethic.
Hold on, take time with me, Nestor, because we hear about revolution, but here you come up with a term. I'm sure many of us are not familiar with it. Moral revolution? What the hell is that now?
Moral reform. We change a few things, but
yes.
the underlying kind of paradigm or understandings remain. We have experienced significant moral drift in our country over many decades.
Yes,
and so a reform of one or two things here isn't going to resolve the problem. And so I think we have to recognize that the moral drift has become so significant, and it is showing up in many different areas of life, and I'll speak about them shortly. That what we actually need is a moral revolution.
A moral revolution,
which sees a commitment to the nation and amongst ourselves, yes, to overturning the moral drift that has taken place. So it shows up, for example, on some of the things that we are teaching our children and promoting things that we want to teach our children, that we know are going to create all kinds of confusion for children.
Yes.
For example, the evidence is showing that some of the dysphoria and confusion that children experience in many countries is leading to self-harm and suicide.
What?
And we are experimenting with some of these things, and that's part of our moral drift.
You want to tell us about some of those things, because that's a major concern.
Well, I am a Christian, Vernon.
Yes.
And human beings have free will. So we can't conflate free will with right. And I don't believe that human beings have a right to rebel against God.
Yeah.
And people are going to disagree on that. And that's fine. But I don't have any other kind of position on that. I don't think human beings have any right to rebel against God.
But
So
you at least you have a moral compass. What about those who
yes.
don't believe in God? I wonder what's their moral compass?
Well, morality is not necessarily a Christian concept,
Yes.
but the one that I subscribe to is related to the faith that I have as a Christian. And but then the moral codes in general,
yes,
do not invite us to lead children into confusion by teaching them all kinds of things which create dysphoria and confusion.
What are some of the things that you're concerned about that we're teaching our children? Because we need to identify them.
I am concerned about the attempts by many people to teach people, our children, alien things about, for example, matters to do with what gender is and what it is not. Those things are foreign to our,
I see what you mean.
Those things are foreign to our culture and our value system. And
you're sure that it is foreign, sir? Because I was applying to buy something and it asked me if I was a male, female. What do I know binary? I thought binary was something to do with maths. I was uncertain.
I'm not, Vernon, I am not even going to comment on those things.
Yes.
My focus here is on ensuring that when I send my grandchildren to school, or my children are adults now,
yes,
that they don't come home confused. They don't come home with questions about their identity. They don't come home in a state of instability and imbalance about what the truth is.
Yes.
And we have a responsibility as a nation to have a consensus around things that prevent young people ending up in psychological issues and engaging in self-harm because they are confused. And I for one, I am not going to pretend, for 1 minute that that the free will that people have translate to right to confuse others. And so I'm not trying to impose my belief system on anybody, but I believe that it is important that the right of parents to determine what they want their children to be taught must be respected. But I want to move quickly away from that. I want to move quickly away from this because there are other elements of this moral drift that is taking place. It shows up, for example, on the comfort level that we have as a nation with poor accountability and with corruption in general. And when you get to a place where we begin to be so comfortable with it, yes, and where honesty and where an intent to do the right thing is somehow seen as less than the things that people do to get ahead, we have a problem. And so when I say we need a moral revolution, I am talking about a need for us to see that this nation needs to change and to change course and move away from this moral drift, which has led us to a place where the servants of the people, for example, do not understand that it is not the people who are servants of the representatives. It is the representatives who are servants of the people.
You're sure about that, Mr.
Vernon, I know you're making fun of me here, but I want to just say that for decades,
yes,
decade upon decade in our country, we have moved away from this notion and this idea that accountability in public life,
yes,
is something that the citizenry have a right to monitor and to demand adherence to.
But suppose I don't care.
Suppose who doesn't care?
The citizens don't care.
Well, Vernon, I would get a loss to accept that citizens don't care. But if we don't, then we're in a worse condition than I'm imagining. Yes?
Okay.
You
Because
know,
let
at
me
the
tell
end of
about
the
people
day,
sometimes. When last time I somebody teach something, hear people say, "Oh, it's a fool." I'm gonna teen thief. Or persons come in to me and say, "Oh, it's a fool. You know if a thief. Yeah, you know if you get way." That's how
well,
people look at things sometimes. It's amazing.
no, you know, I agree. You know, I think that that is part of what our society is
Yes.
today. And you know, Vernon, societies implode when moral drift. You know, the
Yeah.
Roman Empire was not overthrown by arms and so on. It was
Yes.
overthrown by immorality and uncontained moral drift. And our society is in a state of continuing uncontained moral drift. And leadership in our nation, yes, for decades has not been defined by humility, it has been defined by hubris
But is
and
that and
arrogance.
even the public sector, there was a
Arrogance.
time, you used to
Arrogance.
sign letters saying your humble servant. Nobody does that again.
Well, we may sign them, but the question is whether we mean it. And
Yes,
I,
yes.
and I, and I do believe we have to re-examine, how do we relate to one another? Just through respect for all, thorough response to duties called. I mean, we sing these things every day. So I'm not talking about I'm talking about how we relate to one another, how we are
Yes.
encouraged to relate to one another as citizens. We have a huge challenge in Jamaica, for example, what I call negative partisanship. Negative partisanship says that I have a problem with you, and I am going to make sure that your life is uncomfortable. I'm going to say all kind of bad things about you.
Yes.
I'm going to create a tribal division between me and you. Yes, and I may harm you with words, and I may harm you in other ways. That is negative partisanship, and that is a significant legacy of the way that our political culture has evolved in Jamaica. But positive partisanship says, you know what? Here's what we believe. Here's what we commit to. Here's what we embrace, and here's what we are promoting. And I'm focusing on what. And if it is so good, then I should be able to spend time. I don't need to tear you down, I just need to focus on promoting this thing that is so good that I'm holding fast to.
You
And I
never know
believe
you never know the way to rise up is to tear down somebody so that you can climb up.
Well, unfortunately, that has become a commonplace understanding, but it doesn't work in the long term. And I want to just say something more. The research is very clear. Negative partisanship
Yes.
leads to mental illness. And the psychiatrists have continually said that Jamaicans are significantly showing all signs of mental
Hold on.
illness.
Mr. And here's 1 in 3, sir. Well, you know that's how people behave and drive on the roads?
Well, boy, I tell you, there's road rage, but who knows what the root cause? There are many root causes, but I am drawing your attention to research in the United States that shows very clearly that negative partisanship leads to all kinds of mental illnesses, depression, anxiety disorders, violence, hate, all kinds of things the research shows.
But though, that positive things don't make the news. You know that.
What was that, Vernon?
Positive things hardly ever make the news, so how do you deal with that?
Well, I think this is where you and your colleagues come in.
No, exclude me out of that. That is my thing. So we look for negative and positive things.
Your community is the Governor General keeps saying, and he's so right, that there's nothing right.
There's nothing wrong with Jamaica that can make it.
That cannot be fixed by
what is right with Jamaica.
Your community has a responsibility to uphold the good things, talk about the good things, yes, challenge the things that are wrong with our society, yes, challenge the discrimination, for example. The allocation of funding to education, for example, to schools, for example. There is no basis for determining this on equality. Yes, I used to be the ISCF sponsor, the Inter-School Christian Fellowship sponsor at an inner city school. And when I went to that school, every time I went, my heart despaired because what passed for a science lab was despairing to me.
Yes.
And in order to get to that school, you have to forge your way to different roadblocks. Yes, we keep our people in poverty. We underfund some schools. We don't have parent-teachers associations and benefactors. So what we have is we have an elitist system, yes, in our country. And one of my favorite topics here is, for example, We have a program at UTech where the fees to study to get a law degree is 1/5 of the cost at U. And I don't have any issue with U. I used to teach there, and I'm very happy for the both
Yes.
institutions. Yes, but the kids have a challenge getting into the law school. Yes, so it is very clear. The, the, the means of becoming a
Probably
lawyer,
because
becoming a lawyer.
we need less doctors and less lawyers and less scientists.
Well,
So
no, guess what? It is the individual who must decide what they want to become. And
I
if I want,
see.
and if I want to become a lawyer,
Yes, yes.
the system for qualifying me as a lawyer must be in the hands of a government, not in the hands of a private institution.
Yes.
Therefore means I can go anywhere to prepare for that bar exam, like in other places. Yes. And I go and so whether it's in law school or your school, I can go anywhere and prepare for this.
Yeah.
Law school is accredited, and I can do my exams and become what I dream and what my parents want to become. Yes, but we have a system today, yes, that discriminates against the children of the poor, and we're doing nothing about it.
But hold on, that is part of the legacy of Bakamasa. We will get rid of the Queen, and the King. But I can assure you, we are not going to get rid of that anytime soon. Oh?
Well, I am. Guess what? As long as we have pit toilets in Jamaica,
yes,
and we have people have nowhere to live,
yes,
I am not going to be one of those Jamaicans who support spending $200-300 million to buy national pride. Yes, on any reform in the Constitution right now. I want people to be fed, to be housed. I want children to go to decent schools. I want families to be supported. I want the urban blight to be ended. And somebody's going to say the poor we will always have with us. Nonsense. The fact of the matter is, though that is true, that is an excuse that we use in order to avoid dealing with the issues that are before us. And as a Christian, I personally cannot support oppression of the poor.
By the way, I have to mention we only have a few minutes left. You need to get back here and come back soon. But let me give an example. For example, the school system, as far as the media is concerned. If something happens at a school, you know a top school I'm talking about now, they will say at a prestigious school, at a well-known school.
Yes.
But if a tyrant, you will hear, there was a fight at Tarrant this morning and one student was stabbed. How are you going to stop that?
There was a what?
There was a fight at Tarrant Secondary and a student was stabbed. But if it happened at another school, you will hear. At a prestigious school, or what they call it, a traditional. Oh, I love that. A traditional high school. They don't call the names.
Well, I think the news does report everything, and I'm aware of that situation that took place at Tarrant.
No, I'm going to use that as an example, as to how we do things. If we're going to call Tarrant's name, then we must call every single school.
No, I mean, listen, we need to, truth is important.
Yes.
And I think, on that matter of truth, Vernon, I am expecting that we cannot have a situation in our country where we're arguing about whether or not the leaders of our nation, the people who are in the parliament, on the opposition side and on the other side, because there are people on both sides who have not signed the code of ethics, and public servants are required to sign this thing. We in the private sector sign these things.
You don't have a position on that one. That it should be a part of the Constitution, and guess what? You can't be a minister or the Prime Minister or the Governor General until you sign that code. So I don't believe in this little free-for-all. You do it because you want. We need to put it in the Constitution, because mark my word, it's not going to happen.
Well, you know what, Vernon?
Yes.
The ones that the people in the public sector are signing and are being held accountable for many, many years, not in the Constitution, and it works. Until we get to
guess what?
Point.
Well, time is gone. Just wrap up and make a final point. But then you have to come back now, because you have to go tell us about this. We call it the moral not reform.
We need
a moral revolution.
We need a moral revolution and move away from the moral drift. We need a consensus. We need a consensus on accepting more and more accountability for ourselves as citizens.
Yes.
Because many of us are wanting the politicians to be accountable, and many of us don't want to be held accountable either. So we need a consensus on better accountability as a nation, and we need to return to a place where humility in public life becomes the sign.
Right.
Yes. and the gold standard.
Have to leave now. So you make sure
authentic leadership.
Right. Just make sure you prepare for part 2, because you will have to tell us, because I don't recall that being mentioned by anybody. Probably it has, but we're not listening about the moral revolution. That is interesting, Jamaica. You heard that? We need to know about this moral revolution. And the question next time he comes on, who will lead that moral revolution? Thank you very much, Mr. Michael McAnuff-Jones. Have a wonderful day. It's a great talking with you.
Okay, Vernon.
All right.
Thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right, you're listening to Rhythm FM, coming to you live from Kingston, Jamaica.